Cathar beliefs and the problem with the sources. The study of Catharism is complicated by the fact that on almost all questions, a great quantity of different beliefs are recorded. The reason for such divergence is easily identified. On the one hand, the exceptional durability in time, 4 centuries, and the breadth of their diffusion, from Bulgaria to Spain, from Italy to Flanders. On the other hand, the absence of a centralized church that imposed a dogmatic system. It is said that such absence was not viewed as a lack. The Cathars did not consider as heretical those who claimed one belief or another. They were only believers, and that was that. Faith was another thing, and they certainly thought that, as Dante put it, differing voices make sweet harmony. Among the books coming out in the last years of Catharism, only those that were specialized expressed the various theories. The others, destined for a more general public, by not making life difficult for the readers and perhaps also for themselves, only explained one of them. Besides, the great majority of these books dealt with French Catharism, of the tragic crusade against the Albigensians, of the castle of Montsegur, and only in passing the question of doctrine, which in no way presented the divergences that characterized Catharism elsewhere, above all in Italy. Negatively judging this plurality of beliefs did not sufficiently take into consideration the problem of the sources. Page 74. Much of the information on the fate of the Cathars came from the recorded words from the interrogations of the inquisitors, who also transcribed the hardly believable sayings given under torture from people who were only vaguely suspected of adhering or harboring sympathy for Catharism. These sayings, that for France constitutes just one source, represent, however, very interesting documentation, but very unreliable to the end of knowing about Cathar doctrine. It's somewhat as if one were to interrogate on the contents of the Catholic faith the people who come out from church on Sunday and consider their personal opinions to be on the same level as a catechism. Investigations of this kind were, moreover, conducted with results that would be exhilarating if there were not a reflection of an ignorance and a superficiality that there is little to laugh about. The texts written on the Cathars were burned, and only a few of them were saved. The most important is the Book of the Two Principles, discovered in 1999 in Florence by a French Dominican, Father Antoine Dondain, attributed to Giovanni de Lugio, leading representative of one of the most important Italian Cathar churches, that of Desenzano, and active in the first half of the 13th century. All that there is today, believed to be written by the Cathars, or at least used by them, is published in a book entitled The Secret Supper, edited by Francesco Zambon. In the 11th century, when the first forms of heresy appeared more or less traceable to that which only later came to be called Catharism, the heretics were condemned to burn, but there was little concern for what their doctrine might be. Very much later, between the end of the 12th and the 13th century, this need was felt and many treatises were drafted, whose function was to serve as manuals for the interrogators. Therefore, it was proposed to exhibit the Cathar doctrine in a scientific and complete manner, refuting it rather, and placing it obviously in a bad light. It suffices to read some of the titles: Sermons against the Errors of the Cathars, Sermons against Cathars, Book against Manichaeans, Summary against Cathars. Of these works, also written by inquisitors, a deep hatred shines through in the confrontations with the heretics, whose deleterious aspects were exaggerated. Page 75. And did not correspond to the facts. Moreover, they contain multiple inaccuracies, such as equating Cathars and Waldensians. Some of these treatises are, however, relevant enough, being written by authors who came from Cathar families. Such was the manifestation of the heresy of the Cathars, written towards the end of the 12th century by the Milanese Bonacursus, and above all the summary of the Cathars, written around 1250 by Raniero Sacconi di Piacenza, who before becoming an important Dominican inquisitor had been a Cathar. Fundamental is also the work of the Dominican Moneta da Cremona against Cathars and Waldensians, written around 1240. All these treatises, including those written by those who had been Cathars, were bitterly polemic against the Cathars, and they are almost all written by Italians. They constitute, moreover, a most important source of information about Italian Catharism. They show implicitly how this was spread. Catharism was exterminated. It was no more spoken about for centuries. Absolutely nothing. If they began to talk about it now, starting from the first hints to the end of the 19th century, we now have an extensive series of writings ranging from fantastic and unreliable stories to scrupulous studies of the sources.